What is really happening on dealer lots when thousands of new vehicles remain there for months? The year 2026 appears to be witnessing a noticeable mismatch between production and actual demand. In this video, we will take a look at 10 models that have been sitting the longest at dealerships' names that you may find surprising when you hear them. If we look at the figure of nearly 189 days in inventory, we may be seeing more than just a slow-selling model. 6 to 7 months sitting on a lot is usually not random. It seems to reflect a certain gap between the manufacturer's expectations and the real mindset of buyers in 2026. 10 years ago, the Audi A3 was seen as a reasonable gateway into the world of German luxury cars. A compact sedan carrying the prestigious 4-ring badge, priced at a level that allowed buyers to feel they were upgrading without moving too far beyond their financial comfort zone. But the current context appears to have changed significantly. The A3's starting price now exceeds $41,000, with real transaction prices around $43,000. When adding taxes, registration fees, insurance, and loan interest in a higher rate environment than before, the total cost of ownership could approach $50,000. At that level, the question no longer seems to be, can I afford it, but rather, is it worth it? With that amount of money, buyers might consider a more spacious mid-size sedan or even a lightly used luxury crossover that is only a few years old. When placed side by side, the differences in space visibility and practicality may become quite clear. A compact sedan priced above $40,000 begins to look small, both literally and figuratively. What is worth considering is that the A3 once targeted young, successful buyers, those who wanted to sample the luxury car experience for the first time. But the income of this group does not appear to have risen as quickly as vehicle prices over the past 5 years. In addition, higher auto loan interest rates may make monthly payments feel more uncomfortable than before. Quite a few younger buyers perhaps have chosen a more practical solution, purchasing a used vehicle to optimize costs. As a result, the A3 seems to be caught in the middle. It is no longer sufficiently accessible for first-time luxury buyers. At the same time, it is not truly spacious or distinctive enough to persuade older customers who often prioritize comfort and long-term value. For those who remember a time when high-quality mid-size sedans were priced under $30,000, this feeling may seem familiar. The market appears to have moved away from practicality. Entry-level today sometimes carries a price similar to what a premium sedan cost just a few years ago. The car may be smaller, but the check written is larger. And when looking at the A3, many people may ask themselves, what exactly am I paying for? The driving experience, long-term durability, or mainly the badge on the grille? This is not a criticism, but perhaps a very practical consideration in a time when the cost of living continues to rise. When a compact SUV sits on a dealer lot for nearly 178 days, the issue may not lie only in advertising or promotional programs. That figure seems to reflect a deeper reality. This segment could be the most competitive battleground in the U.S. auto market today. Compact SUVs have long been viewed as a safe choice for middle-class families. Honda CR-V, Toyota RAV4, Mazda CX-5, Subaru Forester, Hyundai Tucson. These names have almost become benchmark standards. When buyers walk into a showroom looking for a vehicle around $30,000, they are usually not searching for something overly bold. They appear to be looking for reassurance. And that may be the biggest challenge for the Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross. On paper, the 1.5-liter turbocharged engine sounds adequate. However, many user reviews suggest that acceleration and highway merging do not fully inspire confidence. This may not be a major issue for some buyers. Meanwhile, competitors not only offer stronger engines, but also provide hybrid versions with impressive fuel efficiency. As fuel prices fluctuate and living costs are examined more carefully, fuel economy that is merely average no longer seems attractive enough. At the $30,000 mark, buyers appear to expect a clear balance between power and efficiency. The Eclipse Cross does not seem to truly lead in any specific area. Inside the cabin, the design is considered neat and simple. But in a market where technology and interfaces are increasingly becoming key selling points, stability is sometimes perceived as lacking distinction. Driver assistance and safety technology are not weak, but neither do they stand out when compared with rivals in the same price range. and in such a crowded segment, being average may be the hardest thing to forgive. However, the story may not lie solely in the product. Mitsubishi in the US no longer holds the position it had in the early 2000s. A small market share, a limited product lineup, and few standout models seem to make the brand appear more faded in buyers' minds. In reality, the Eclipse Cross is not a poor vehicle. It does not have obvious serious weaknesses. But in a segment where the CR-V and RAV4 are considered the standard, and where the Tucson and CX-5 offer a more modern and sharper feel, Mitsubishi appears to fall somewhere in between. With the same $30,000 budget, many buyers may be willing to spend a little more to choose a more familiar brand. That difference is sometimes viewed as a kind of psychological insurance, paying extra in exchange for peace of mind regarding durability and future resale value. At a price of around $32,000, the Jeep Compass stands right beside names that have become segment standards: Honda CR-V, Toyota RAV4, Mazda CX-5. These are not easy competitors. They are models that have built reputations for durability, resale value, and long-term stability over many years. And when buyers enter the family SUV segment, they do not seem to be looking for an experiment. They appear to be seeking certainty. At over $30,000, every dollar spent is carefully considered. The Compass is not significantly cheaper to create a clear advantage. When priced similarly to the CR-V or RAV4, buyers tend to compare every small detail: interior space, fuel consumption, build quality, long-term maintenance costs. And without a truly standout factor, equal pricing may become a disadvantage rather than a benefit. In terms of technology and performance, the Compass does not seem to dominate in any clear strength. The infotainment and driver assistance systems are adequate but difficult to describe as leading. Meanwhile, the CX-5 is often mentioned for its solid driving feel. The CR-V stands out for space and hybrid options. The RAV4 is known for reliability and impressive fuel efficiency. In addition, more than 27,000 units in inventory suggest that supply may have exceeded demand. Market forecasts may once have been fairly optimistic. But as more vehicles sit on lots, pressure on dealers increases as well. They must absorb the financial costs of inventory and may be forced to offer incentives. And when buyers see long rows of unsold vehicles, they tend to waiting for deeper discounts, waiting for better promotions. That wait a little longer mindset may prolong the inventory cycle. In terms of brand image, Jeep has long been associated with off-road capability and a distinctive style. However, the Compass is not an off-road icon like the Wrangler. At the same time, it is not as spacious as the CR-V nor as fuel-efficient as the RAV4 hybrid. A strong brand may attract initial attention, but it does not seem sufficient to compensate for the lack of a clearly differentiated product. When looking at the figure of around 178 days of inventory for the Kia Sorento, equivalent to nearly half a year of supply exceeding demand, many people may see it as just dry data. But if more than 35,000 units are sitting at dealerships across the United States, the story no longer seems to be simply about slow sales. It appears to reflect a certain hesitation on the buyer's side. On paper, the Sorento does not seem to lack anything. 3 rows of seats, plenty of technology, modern design, and an average transaction price around the $40,000 mark. Yet its exact position in the market may be what makes things more complicated. Below it, the Sportage is priced noticeably lower. For small families or for fathers and grandfathers who only occasionally carry 3 generations at once, a 2-row SUV may seem sufficient. In a time when every expense is being considered more carefully than before, keeping a few $1,000s in your pocket can create a clear sense of reassurance. Especially for those over 55, when income may be more stable but no longer rising quickly. Financial decisions often carry a more cautious tone. Above it, the Telluride appears to offer a more complete image, more spacious, more highly rated, and perhaps delivering a stronger sense of value once you are already near the $40,000 threshold. And so the Sorento may be caught in the middle. Not inexpensive enough to claim a savings advantage, yet not distinctive enough to make buyers feel they are making a meaningful upgrade. The presence of more than 35,000 units in inventory may also suggest production was ramped up after parts supply gradually stabilized. Many manufacturers seem to believe demand would rebound strongly, but buyers appear to have changed. Purchase decisions now often take longer. Comparisons are more thorough. And when shoppers notice large inventories, some may choose to wait, hoping for deeper incentives. This cycle may further slow turnover, and middle-positioned models like the Sorento could become the first to feel the pressure. The three-row SUV segment is already crowded. Highlander Pilot Ascent and several other names have built reputations over many years. For buyers who have spent decades behind the wheel, brand history and stability seem to carry real weight. In that landscape, the Sorento is not only competing externally, but must also convince buyers it is not a compromised choice. Some would argue that the minivan is no longer a mainstream choice. SUVs have taken much of the spotlight. However, for larger families or grandparents who regularly drive grandchildren on weekends, a minivan may still be the most practical option. Wide space sliding doors, flexible seating. These are qualities SUVs may not fully replace. As a product concept, the Pacifica does not appear weak. The stow-and-go system, allowing seats to fold flat into the floor, was once viewed as a clever solution, very much in the American spirit, flexible, practical, without unnecessary flash. For many years, this may have been a unique advantage that helped the Pacifica stand apart. A spacious interior, multiple family-friendly configurations, and even a hybrid version aimed at improving fuel efficiency on paper. The feature list seems quite complete. So why does a 194-day inventory figure exist? The power sliding doors are one example. In a minivan, this is not just an extra feature. It is central to the experience. When power doors operate inconsistently, even in certain cases, convenience can turn into frustration. And for families with young children or older adults, issues with basic features may be harder to accept than any shortcoming in infotainment technology. For many Americans who have purchased vehicles over several decades, experience may have taught a simple lesson: the more complex the technology, the greater the chance of complications. What they may be looking for in a minivan is not necessarily a larger screen or more charging ports. They want a vehicle that starts reliably every morning and does not create additional reasons to return to the dealership outside of routine maintenance. When compared with the Toyota Sienna or Honda Odyssey, the picture appears clearer. The Sienna seems to have built an image of long-term durability and steady fuel efficiency over many years. The Odyssey carries a long-standing reputation for smooth driving and practicality. In a segment with relatively few choices, buyers tend to lean toward the brand perceived as the safest bet. And when a purchase decision is driven more by responsibility than emotion, psychological security may matter more than price alone. The economic context of 2026 also seems to make everything more sensitive. Higher interest rates may turn an auto loan into a long-term financial commitment worth serious thought. When the total cost of owning a minivan approaches $40,000 to $50,000, buyers may not want to trade that commitment for any degree of uncertainty. Do you agree with that perspective? Let us know in the comments below. For car enthusiasts, labeling a Mustang as hard to sell may sound unusual. Yet that is the reality for thousands of units, around 19,000 to be exact. An average transaction price of about $48,000 is one example. 5 to 7 years ago, the Mustang was still seen as an attainable sports car. Today, after adding insurance, loan, interest, registration, and operating costs, the total cost of ownership can be significantly higher than initial expectations. In the same price range, buyers may consider a small, luxury SUV with a higher seating position and clearer practicality, or a used luxury sedan that offers a different sense of prestige. Even electric vehicles with impressive acceleration are drawing attention from younger generations. The Mustang, therefore, is not just competing with other coupes, it seems to be competing with the entire performance market. Inside the cabin, the changes are also quite noticeable. Larger screens, more digital displays, fewer physical buttons. From a technology standpoint, this may be seen as progress. But for a segment of middle-aged and older customers, the soul of the Mustang may not lie in a digitized interface. It lies in the mechanical feel, in the gear shifter, in the engine sound, in the direct connection between driver and machine. As mechanical experience is gradually replaced by interface experience, the emotional connection may no longer feel as strong as before. Not because the car has become worse, but because the expectations of those who have been attached to the Mustang for decades may differ from its modern direction. At the same time, prolonged high inventory may force dealers to increase incentives. That could attract new buyers, but it may also affect perceptions of resale value once considered a strength of the Mustang. When buyers begin to question whether resale value will remain stable, they tend to hesitate longer before signing a contract. Looking at the GMC Sierra EV with around 184 days of inventory and an average price close to $77,000, the first reaction for many of us may not be excitement, but perhaps a moment of pause. Nearly 6 months sitting on dealer lots suggests that the market's absorption rate for this electric pickup has not kept pace with production, and that upon closer examination may not be entirely surprising. At this price point, buyers may begin comparing it with highly configured gasoline or diesel Sierra trims, or even with luxury vehicles. With auto loan rates still not particularly easy, the monthly payment can become a factor that makes many people think longer. Charging infrastructure is also a variable worth considering. In major urban areas, charging may be increasingly convenient. But in many rural or semi-urban regions where pickups are especially popular, public charging networks still appear uneven. For those who frequently tow-haul heavy loads or travel long distances, the question of charging time versus traditional refueling can become decisive. The Sierra EV is not only competing with other electric trucks. It must also compete directly with its own gasoline and diesel counterparts, often priced lower, familiar in refueling, and backed by durability records proven over time. When facing two options in the same showroom, it is understandable if some buyers choose the familiar route, especially when a truck is viewed more as a work tool than a technology symbol. Of course, this does not mean the Sierra E5 is a weak product. On the contrary, technically, it may represent significant progress. But the market seems to be changing quickly, and buyer readiness may not always move in step with production speed. Technology may be advancing rapidly, while consumer psychology, especially among those who have lived through multiple economic cycles, often moves more cautiously and deliberately. Are you wondering why this Hyundai appears on the list? The Ioniq 5 was initially seen as a symbol of bold design. A distinctive shape, minimalist interior, large screens, and a highly digitalized experience. All of it created a significant wave of interest. For those who love technology and novelty, it seemed like an appealing choice. But after the initial excitement, the market appears to have entered a more practical phase where the question is no longer, is the car beautiful and modern, but rather, does it fit my daily life? Although many issues have been improved through software updates, the very need to rely on periodic software updates may create a sense of complexity. For many people, the ideal car is something dependable, something that starts and operates without having to think about software versions or new patches. When a vehicle depends heavily on electronic systems, even a small glitch can slightly reduce the feeling of control. The mainstream EV market today is no longer as sparse as it was a few years ago. Many new options have emerged, and pricing between models is gradually converging. When design differences are no longer especially striking, buyers may begin comparing more carefully in terms of driving range, charging infrastructure, or long-term reliability. In that context, the Ioniq 5's early mover advantage may no longer be as clear as before. Perhaps this reflects the gap between the speed of technological innovation and the pace of market acceptance. The Ioniq 5 represents a new modern and distinctive generation of electric vehicles. But when technology changes quickly, some buyers may worry that today's model will soon be replaced by a better platform in a short time. Therefore, the high inventory of the Ioniq 5 may not reflect a weak product. It seems to reflect an adjustment in rhythm between supply and market psychology. Technology may have moved one step ahead, but buyer confidence may need more time to catch up. The BMW 8 Series was built as a luxury grand tourer, powerful, smooth, and oriented towards stylish long-distance journeys. For many gentlemen over 55, the concept of a grand tourer may recall a time when a two-door coupe symbolized success. Back then, a long, low car with a strong engine and a driver-focused cockpit could be seen as a well-earned reward after many years of work. But today's market no longer seems to place coupes at the center. Luxury SUVs and crossovers appear to capture most of the attention. When someone spends over $100,000, they may ask whether to choose a beautiful, elegant coupe or a luxury SUV that is spacious, practical, and holds a higher presence on the road. In that context, a large coupe may become more of an emotional choice than a purely rational financial decision. At a price of around $112,000, customers may be seeking more than just performance or comfort. They seem to expect a clear symbolic value, something that immediately signals it is a special car. The 8 Series occupies an interesting position, very luxurious, very refined, but perhaps not rare enough to be a collector's item, and not the absolute highest performance variant to feel like the top of the range. A coupe priced above $100,000 may look very attractive on paper, but in daily use many people may find a luxury SUV more convenient. Wider doors, easier rear seat access, more flexible space. The ultra-luxury segment, though it may seem immune to economic fluctuations, appears more sensitive than many assume. When financial markets adjust, luxury consumer assets are often among the first to be reconsidered. Buyers may choose to observe for a few more quarters rather than decide immediately. And it only takes a portion of customers choosing to wait a little longer for inventory levels to extend quickly. When a model like the Volkswagen ID.4 records around 527 days of inventory, that figure seems to go beyond the scope of normal slow sales. More than a year sitting at dealerships under normal market conditions would likely already represent a full sales cycle. This appears to indicate not just a short-term slowdown, but a prolonged imbalance between production output and actual demand. For many of us, such a number may evoke a familiar feeling: when supply moves faster than demand, the market will sooner or later adjust itself. A large inventory often creates a clear psychological effect. Buyers may think if there are still that many vehicles available, prices might drop further. And when many people think the same way, purchase decisions are delayed. This seems to create a loop. High inventory leads to price reductions. Price reductions encourage buyers to wait longer, and the sales cycle slows down even more. In that context, values in the used car market may also come under pressure. Vehicles sitting for a long time mean inventory, financing costs continue to rise. Loan interest storage costs. Opportunity costs. All of these seem to erode profit margins over time. Dealers may be forced to offer incentives or discounts to clear stock. But when discounting becomes common practice, the perceived value of the product may no longer maintain its original image. The midsize electric SUV segment today also appears far more crowded than it was a few years ago. Buyers have many options in terms of driving range, charging ecosystem software, and pricing. When there are too many similar choices, decisions often do not happen faster. On the contrary, they may be delayed. In addition, new models are continuously launched with improved batteries and software updates, causing some buyers to worry that purchasing today could mean becoming outdated sooner than expected. Charging infrastructure, although expanding, still appears uneven across regions. For those living in suburban or semi-rural areas, home charging or long-distance travel may require careful consideration. An electric vehicle is not just a new means of transportation. It may require changes to habits formed over decades. And changing habits, as many might agree, rarely happens simply because of an attractive advertising campaign. Looking at the 10 models sitting on dealer lots, it seems the issue does not lie solely with each individual vehicle, but with shifting market psychology itself. When prices are higher, technology more complex, and risks harder to predict, buyers appear to choose waiting rather than rushing. Perhaps 2026 will bring further adjustments. In your view, is this a temporary signal or a long-term turning point for the auto market? Let us know your thoughts below. This video is for informational and educational purposes only, based on publicly available data and general automotive analysis. It's not meant to target any specific brand, but to offer helpful market perspective for buyers and owners. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments, and consider subscribing for more discussions like this. See you next time.